Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us in the next buildingSMART UK and Ireland Assemble event. This is the second event. We do still have some people joining. We're up to 31 people so far. So thank you for taking the time to join. We're going to crack on. We do have a lot to get through. I'm going to skip the intro about me, but you'll have these slides afterwards. But this is me in my roles as chair of buildingSMART UK and Ireland, and in tandem with that, my role as vice chair of UK BIM Alliance. Before we dive into the agenda, I just need to mention that this will be recorded. So if you do miss any of the content, it will be uploaded to the UK BIM Alliance YouTube channel and published and announced in the usual channels. If you've got any questions, enter them into the chat and we'll address them as and when we can. There is, as you can see on the agenda, 10 minutes on the end of each presentation session for questions relevant to that session. And then we'll have a wrap up at the end and answer any pertinent questions within the timescale. A lot of us do have to finish dead on midday, but it's nice to see as many people on this call as we have currently. So I'm going to give a 20-minute update on buildingSMART UK and Ireland and buildingSMART International in terms of what's going on right now. Fantastic work that's been published already since the last Assemble event. 10 minutes of questions, then we'll introduce Phil Reed to give an update from the education stream about the digital competence upskilling. Then we have IFC in real life, a case study from Tim Davies, another one of our committee members. And then finally at 11:30, a 20-minute great IFC quiz by Emma, and then the summary questions and wrap up to finish at midday. In terms of the great IFC quiz, we'll be running that, or Emma will be running that on Slido. So you've got until 11:30 to make sure you're set up on Slido. The event code is #bSUKI-02. So you can join on any of your devices there. We'll run through the quiz that Emma set up there. First, I did this last time. I do have to apologise for anyone who was at the Assemble event last time. Some of this will be repetitive. There are a lot of updates on each of the slides because we've been quite busy in the background. But we do need to mention the acronyms that we might be using. So the potential ones that always cause a little bit of confusion. The acronym we use for buildingSMART International is BSI with a small b and an uppercase S and I, which is not to be confused with the British Standards Institute, which is all lowercase b, S and I. And we also have buildingSMART UK and Ireland, which we try not to, but we do refer to as bSUKI in the back of what we do, because buildingSMART UK and Ireland is a lot to say when you say it as much as we do. So apologies if we slip into those during all the presentations, but we'll try and mention it as it should be with the full words to help everyone along. Okay, so we did this last time, and again we talk about the context of buildingSMART UK and Ireland and the organisation and membership. So we're going to give some updates on how that works. So context. This is us, this is buildingSMART UK and Ireland, and we are one and the same organisation as the UK BIM Alliance. So this was a helpful thing in that we have a similar audience with different perspectives on how we work with BIM and with open BIM data. But we are governed by Syria, our legal entity, and that's how we operate, and both the UK BIM Alliance and the members and the patrons, and also buildingSMART UK and Ireland, our members and company members. Obviously, buildingSMART UK and Ireland has good connections, obviously, as a local regional chapter of buildingSMART International, and we'll discuss a bit more later on about the work that we are doing that contributes to the international stage and represents UK and Ireland and our needs. This is in there as a standard slide, just so that we don't need to put it elsewhere, but it's there. buildingSMART is the organisation that is driving digital transformation of the built asset industry in its use of open standards. It's open, neutral and an international non-profit organisation. So we do need to, unfortunately, in some parts of the world, drive membership fees to enable us to do what we do. But again, I'm going to discuss how that works in practice in the UK, because as an individual, anyone can be a member. That goes for the UK BIM Alliance, as well as buildingSMART UK and Ireland. Any individual, as you have now, can join, engage, help, contribute, do whatever to be a part of both the UK BIM Alliance and specifically for this webinar for buildingSMART UK and Ireland. It is slightly different when we come to discuss company membership, in that we can have different scenarios. So the first scenario is that a company in the UK or anywhere around the world approaches the UK BIM Alliance and says, I'd like to become a patron. We have different levels of patronage with the UK BIM Alliance that can be found on their website. But what does that mean in connection to buildingSMART UK and Ireland? And what we've recently put in place is that as one of your benefits of becoming a patron of the UK BIM Alliance, you also become a company member of buildingSMART UK and Ireland. Now it's not necessarily new, but it's something we're formalising right now. In the second scenario, we have a company that approaches one of the committee as buildingSMART UK and Ireland, and they want to become a company member. In this instance, due to trying to streamline the whole process, we don't actually have that option in the UK, in that we'd actually refer you back to the UK BIM Alliance to become a patron there, managed by Pam Bandal and Andy Bootle, and they will become a company member, a patron, and therefore a company member of buildingSMART UK and Ireland. The third scenario is that either an international company becomes a multinational member and selects the UK and Ireland as a chapter, or a company becomes a single chapter UK and Ireland member. In which case, what does that mean for the UK BIM Alliance? And we basically said and determined that they become a patron of the UK BIM Alliance at the lowest level. So we're bringing in organisations to make the most of their impact for both organisations, depending on who they approach at what time. But it's basically one set of money to be paid to become members of both organisations at the company level. Now, we are in the process of determining whether officially we need to provide membership numbers for companies and for individuals. And this is particularly in relation to something that Phil will be discussing later on in terms of the professional certification for people in the UK and Ireland to demonstrate that they are a member of a chapter or a member of working for a company that is a chapter member. So we will determine that, and we'll let you know hopefully by the next Assemble event in 3 months. The benefits of buildingSMART International membership are all to be found on their websites. Similarly, we have the UK BIM Alliance patronage benefits. It's really about determining what level of integration you want and what sort of organisation you are at company level, and how you want to engage with buildingSMART at a chapter level and also at an international level. So in terms of development since the last Assemble event, we've still got our committee that deals with membership, deals with the finances, deals with buildingSMART International, deals with engagement. And key to the buildingSMART side of things is the rooms and the projects that go on. Then we have a steering group. We've started to populate with individuals now. Then we have industry and community contributors, and we'll be starting to reach out to various people and expand the network of influence into the standards that are being created and the projects that are going on in rooms. And then we have the majority of our industry who are observing. And again, there is a lot to observe, and this chapter, one of the aims of the chapter is to increase visibility of what's going on. So what we're trying to do is to reach as many people as possible out there in the community who just want to know what's going on, and then perhaps think about contributing, becoming more and more involved as the time goes by. We do have our 4 Vs. We want to be vast, as I mentioned. We're expanding our reach. We want to be vibrant, vital, and valuable. So all of these are about creating awareness, engagement, communication, and commitment from various different organisations and individuals. We want it to be vibrant. We do want to encourage activity and visibility of what it is we're doing. We also need to make sure that we are being productive and meeting the industry needs in the UK and Ireland by having a voice and making that voice concise and heard at an international level. And again, it needs to be valuable, as we are representing the UK and Ireland, not just the committee, not just our immediate members, but we're trying to get as much involvement and engagement as we can from the industry to make sure we're covering all the bases. We want targeted involvement, timely advice, and the biggest challenge I think that OpenBIM and IFC has is the perception that it's just for experts, and currently there is an education upskilling to be done to understand what that means. But we do need to make this not just for experts. We need more people to understand the broad capabilities of things, as well as the technical intricacies if you need to. So, key people so far. At the first Assemble event that we did 3 months ago, there was this core committee of 5 people, and we asked, we need more people, please. And I'm really quite glad and proud to announce that we've now expanded the team significantly with Tim and Phil, who you hear from today, with Lawrence, with James, Stephen, John, Martin, Marek, and the first 2 people in the steering group, the outer ring of the committee, in Dan Ruster and Nick June. You will notice that most of the people on there, aside from Emma, are male, and it's something we are addressing. And as of around about 9 o'clock this morning, Patricia Massey has joined us to be part of the committee, with particular emphasis working in the product room at international level, which is really continuing the work she already does, but it's formalising that as a buildingSMART UK and Ireland representation, as a coordinating the efforts that go along towards the product room. We have committee work streams that you've noticed on the first org chart in the circular diagram. Nick Nisbet and I deal with the buildingSMART International Liaison as Chair and Vice Chair of buildingSMART UK and Ireland. Emma and Dave deal with the engagement side of things, rooms and projects, with Dave taking up the membership side of things. Phil is leading the education piece with Lawrence as a co-lead, and then we have Stephen as the finance with myself, just reporting on finances that come from either company membership or individual membership or multinational membership via buildingSMART International as a rebate much of these days. We are still continuing to fill those gaps in terms of the internal back of house work streams to keep the chapter resilient. But what we've done at the last meeting a couple of weeks ago was start to put coordinators and co-coordinators in charge of the individual rooms where the work is happening. So we do have individuals in place right now. We do have gaps, as you can see. So we've got particular gaps in relation to what's going on in the airport room. Currently, we have no representation there. We obviously know people out there in the industry. If anyone who's on the call who either wants to be involved in the airport room to coordinate the responses from the UK and Ireland to put towards international level, please do let us know. On the construction side, we're looking for another coordinator alongside Tim. And Lawrence has temporarily stepped in as the product lead, but I think we're going to slot Trish Massey into that place alongside James. But then we do also have gaps for coordinators in the railway and regulatory rooms alongside Lawrence and Nick, respectively. We have a bench that currently Phil Reed, myself and Stephen Holmes sit on. And that's purely because we're so busy doing other things in relation to the work that we're doing. But we do have gaps, and these are not people who are solely responsible for creating the content and representing the UK and Ireland, but we do certainly view these people as coordinating, gathering the feedback and the input from the rest of the industry in the UK. So this is by no means closed. It's an open organisation. We want to get as many opinions and thoughts as possible going forward to make sure that we are representing as much of the industry as possible at an international level. with respect to the individual rooms where the work is happening. But we still do need more people, as we've said. It is a forever growing and much more resilient chapter now than it ever was at the start of the year when I took over. So hopefully we're looking to make that much more resilient and gather that feedback from the industry. When it comes to rooms and projects, I'm going to whip through these quickly. We do have the work going on. We do have people representing those rooms now, and at the next Assemble event, what I'm going to look to do is to make them more focused and have an update or an introduction to the work that is going on in each of those rooms. So it will be less about the organisation of Building Smart UK and Ireland as we've got now, but some of that time will be taken to give a platform for the coordinators of those rooms to give the industry an update of what is going on right now immediately and what you can contribute to. So at the next Assemble event, we're hoping to include updates from all of the rooms. If not, there may be some of them if we have time, depending on how time works out. But also depending on what you guys, the audience, would like to see. So if you'd prefer to see just updates from the rooms, we'll do that. If you'd prefer to see case studies after today's examples that you've seen, then we'll continue to do that. But we do really need to make this a mechanism for communicating and transmitting out to the industry as to what's going on and how you can get involved. Alongside the rooms, there is also the standards that are created by Building Smart International, and we obviously need to contribute to those in a similar way. So in terms of news, hopefully most people would have seen the BIM Interoperability Expert Group report that went out in March, quickly followed by the summary of that report after the feedback from the industry. This is a positive thing in our view, in that the summary document identifies what's on screen now. A lot of those things are challenges that we might all recognise, particularly in relation to COBE and IFC in this forum, but also in the education and skills side of things that Phil will be addressing in a few minutes. The standard side of things that we mentioned that Building Smart and other organisations are defining. Standard data approaches also, and then things relating to procurement and contract. So there are all of these things that are identified as work streams that will be going on, and hopefully Anne Kemp will be going into this in a little bit more detail this afternoon in the UK BIM Alliance Forum event. Importantly, what it says on the bottom is that government must lead the way. There is a consensus that the UK government should continue its support for the development and adoption of the above enablers as part of the evolving BIM mandate. Does give us a hint as to what might be happening in the near future in terms of updated requirements and a refresh of the mandate that has served us so well and significantly boosted the industry digital transformation as we are now. Other news, we now have a Building Smart UK and Ireland LinkedIn company page. There was previously a forum and a chat space. We will be linking to that in this, but please do go and join and engage, and that's where we'll be posting a lot of the news as one of our main channels. So thanks to Emma for setting that up, but please do go and engage. We do have 140 followers already on there, which is great considering it's only been going for 2 or 3 weeks. News relating to the Building Smart 2020 awards. The deadline has been extended. The deadline was originally the 5th of July, which is only next week, but it has been extended. And helpfully, we did put this out on social media. We now have the offer for any UK and Ireland based submissions, the offer from our Vice Chair Nick Nisbet and our committee member and previous winner Tim Davies, to help and coach you through your submission. So if anyone is from the UK and Ireland and thinking about submitting something for the Building Smart Awards this year, the deadline is just over a month away, and Nick and Tim have offered to help coach you through that process. Nick was a former judge, and Tim, as I said, was a former winner. very experienced in terms of what needs to be done and what creates a good submission with a chance of winning. So if anyone needs any help with that, get in touch with us on any of the social media channels or individually on the chat in the questions in this webinar. Last Assemble event, we mentioned or introduced or teased perhaps the technical roadmap entitled Get Ready for the Future. That covers these 6 items on the left here. There is now a dedicated page on the BuildingSMART International website with a helpful video. It's only half an hour long, but it is a really good, helpful video from Leon van Berlo, Technical Director at BuildingSMART International. But this page really does contain everything you need to know about the future of Open BIM and the standards and how IFC is going to be developing. It's a really helpful key to what is going on in the background right now and how things will be transforming in the future. And it really does connect. If your mind is in this state where we're talking about interoperability, you're familiar with them terms, it really does connect a lot of things about how these things can then allow future technological solutions to happen. So it does link with smart buildings, smart cities, digital twins, and all of those things. So it does give that dot on the horizon that we are heading for. And the amount of work and emphasis that's gone into that is really quite helpful and encouraging. So I've rattled through that quite quickly. It has gone just over my 20 minutes, but we have time for questions if anyone's got any individual questions related to what I've just said. I'm just trying to see the questions that come through. Is the summary valid given it only quoted 20 odd responses? That's not necessarily something I have the authority to answer, but I would guess so, yes. It is a standard process, the process that everything has to go through in terms of being written, go out to industry for feedback, and it is up to industry to provide that feedback. And if that feedback comes in 20 or 20,000 responses, it is still valid. Are there any more questions? Because I can only see that one question on there. Oh no, we've got another couple.
Yeah.
Yes, Sean, I haven't managed to in person yet, but yes, we are having those discussions about you joining the committee. Gareth asks, are we going to get people from client FM asset management side? Absolutely. We have people on the committee that represent those organisations. Lawrence is representing Network Rail and the work they do there. We are also not, as I said, just the people that are mentioned in the committee and coordinators. This is not where the opinions are coming from. The opinions will be coming from industry. So we need to reach out now that we have leads for those rooms to go and reach out to industry, to those clients and asset management side of things, and get their views and opinions. This is the whole point of what BuildingSMART UK and Ireland are doing. But these things happen in time. We have to get the people in place on the committee to lead the streams, to lead the rooms, and then to connect with the industry to get their feedback, to inform and create the requirement set for representation of UK and Ireland at international level. So yeah, thanks Gareth for that question. Sean wants to know what, yeah, Sean's got some people in airport space. Yep, that's helpful. We'll follow up afterwards, you, Sean. We have no indication of Reddit. Yes, Graham has asked online about individual membership. Yeah, as we mentioned, individual membership is free and open, and we've always said that. We are, as I said, in the membership side of things, talking to BuildingSMART International to request clarity on whether individuals require a membership number to be able to get discounts on the professional certification, which is basically where the need for a membership number has come from. If an individual wants to be involved and engaged at UK and Ireland levels, absolutely free and available to anyone. But we do encourage companies to join, to basically fund what it is we do, but in the UK and Ireland, we do that via the UK BIM Alliance as patronage. So there are mechanisms there. I hope that answers your question, Graham. But for now, 1 minute ahead of time, I'm going to hand over to Phil for his update on the upskilling stream.
Thanks, Casey. And good morning, everybody. Right, hopefully you can see that screen. If somebody could just confirm that, perhaps on the panel, that would be good.
Perfect, Phil.
Yeah, need to see it. Okay, excellent. Okay, so again, good morning, everybody. So what I'm going to do is really talk about what the UK BIM Alliance, and as Casey has already pointed out, by inference buildingSMART UK&I, is doing to try and raise digital competence in the built environment. And essentially, I'm going to talk about two areas: upskilling and certification, and firstly, our views on that, I guess, to some extent, but more importantly, what we're doing around the education piece, or trying to do around the education piece. So before I do that, just a quick introduction. What are we really trying to do and why? So I think the first thing about what we're trying to do is anything that we say to you in terms of a guideline is, we've got to make sure that it doesn't drive commercial gain for any specific accreditation organization or any training provider. That isn't to say that companies are out there trying to run commercial businesses. That's all very well and good, and as it should be. So we actually want as many people to be involved in this as we possibly can. But it certainly should not lock a client into one or other service provider. I think the other important point about the next 3 points is there are a number of organizations here that really are interested in upskilling and education. And my goal as the lead is to try and make sure that we ensure that we get industry-wide support and, more importantly, alignment, so that there is consistent message coming out from the UK BIM Alliance or BSI or buildingSMART or CDDB in terms of an upskilling guideline. And the idea is really to try and develop the level of digital competence in the UK around the UK BIM framework. And what we're really going to be talking about today is what are we recommending around education and certification, and where are we on those programs. So that's really what I'm going to talk about. And the reason we're doing all of this, I think everybody, if you look at the report from the BIM Experts Interoperability Group and pretty much everyone else I talk to in my day-to-day role, is we have a problem with education and upskilling in the UK. So we need to try and do something about that for a number of reasons, mainly to de-risk the outcome of projects, but also to make us competitive in the worldwide digital construction industry. So that's really why we're trying to do this and trying to get some alignment. So let me talk a bit about this for a second, and it's quite important because when you talk about upskilling, there are various levels of complexity as you learn. So Bloom's digital taxonomy, which was invented back in the 50s and then kind of reinvented for the digital economy, actually talks about these different layers or levels of education. And essentially what it's really saying is you kind of need to start with remembering a concept. And once you can remember it, you then need to be able to understand it. And not until you understand and remember a concept can you start applying it and analyzing it, evaluating, and so on and so forth. So this is the kind of complexity that we go through as we learn about a concept and try and apply it. So really, this is the bones of what we're trying to do as a concept. Before I go any further, let me just talk about my roles, not because I want to talk about me, but I just want to talk about these different organizations in the context of upskilling. So essentially, you've got the UK BIM Alliance, which I'm the project lead for the upskilling program. I'm also, as Casey has just pointed out, the education lead, if you will, for the buildingSMART program. For all intents and purposes, those two organizations are the same. I also sit on the Professional Certification Steering Committee for buildingSMART International, which basically means I look at the programs launched by all of the other buildingSMART chapters globally and are in the approval committee for those launches. So it gives me a good insight into what's going on globally. And finally, I'm also working as part of the education and skills work stream that Casey's also mentioned for the CDDB, which is the sort of outcome of this BIM Experts Internet Group, Interoperability Group. Sorry, those acronyms around the wrong way, I think. So what I'm really trying to do here is make sure that whatever we come out with in terms of guidance, that these things are as closely aligned as possible. So let me sort of talk about the relationships between these different organisations. You all know about the UK BIM framework, I hope. And if you don't, then of course, feel free to ask any questions. But essentially, that is something that is being developed by these three organisations, which hopefully you also will know and love. And again, as Casey's pointed out, buildingSMART International, or it's buildingSMART UK&I, sorry, is for all intents and purposes one and the same organisation as the UK BIM Alliance. It has patrons, of which Man and Machine is one, but there are many or several. And again, I will support Casey and encourage as many people to get involved in that as possible. So if anyone's interested in that, then of course do let us know. And then if you just talk about the buildingSMART environment, essentially what you've got there is you've got buildingSMART International as the overarching organisation, and you have a chapter in each country, typically set up. And again, as Casey's pointed out, the remit there really is they're really trying to push the concept of open BIM. So essentially on this slide, you've got kind of two concepts that are not mutually exclusive. So open BIM, UK BIM framework are very much intertwined and aligned in terms of what they're trying to do, which brings me on to the education guidance and what we're trying to do. So in summary, what we're trying to do here in terms of the upskilling program is really trying to make sure that whatever we say really embraces those two concepts of open BIM and the UK BIM framework. And the other thing that I will point out at this point is that you can think about education at these two different levels. One is the kind of basic foundational knowledge. Second one is practitioner skills. And at this point in time, we're very much focused on basic foundational skills. So what are we really recommending is we are recommending that individuals take if individuals need to take an educational training program, they should do that, and that they should take a course that embodies the UK BIM framework learning outcomes, which is something that some of you probably haven't heard about before, but I'm going to go on to discuss that in a second. And we are essentially working through bSUKI to ensure that when we launch the professional certification program buildingSMART do, that it fully aligns to the UK BIM framework learning outcomes. So that is essentially what we're trying to say around, or what we are saying around education. So how are we going to do that? So let's come back to these different organisations and their links. So essentially on the left you have Open BIM. You've got a number of chapters, by the way, there that you can see that are already launching or have launched the professional certification program within their countries. And what we are doing, if you actually look at the professional certification from buildingSMART, what exactly is it? Essentially, it is a process of learning and taking some individual qualification exams, and for training providers that want to offer the professional certification, they are given this body of knowledge, which currently has 5 modules in it, which basically says, here is a body of knowledge of content that you should include in your course. That is used by them to develop their course material, and then obviously students they don't have to, they can take a professional examination and get a buildingSMART accredited professional certification. So that's what's happening already. That's already out there in the industry on a global basis. A number of chapters have already launched that. Now, that brings me to a document that you will see published in the next, I would say, 2 to 4 weeks, called the UK BIM Framework Learning Outcomes. That is a document that has been worked on. It is likely to be published, as I say, in the next 4 weeks. And it is likely to be published through the UK BIM Framework website. So it's kind of been those organisations that are involved in the UK BIM Framework are behind that document. What is its purpose? Essentially, its purpose is to define what the learning outcomes should be and to make that document freely available to anyone that wants to develop training course around it. And what we want to do is make sure that those learning outcomes are fully aligned and embedded into the buildingSMART professional certification that is launched by the UK&I chapter, probably around the autumn time. And in order to do that, we have basically gone through the process of mapping the UK BIM framework learning outcomes to the buildingSMART professional certification. And what you can do or are allowed to do as a chapter is put additional content in the buildingSMART professional certification program for your country. Essentially, in summary, that means we have to develop a learning outcome module 6, which essentially will embed anything that is not covered in the standard body of knowledge that buildingSMART have, modules 1 to 5. If there's anything in the UK BIM framework learning outcomes that is not covered in that body of knowledge, then we will need to develop a content or a module 6 content. So essentially our own body of knowledge for the UK&I, which will be combined with the other body of knowledge and given to training providers in the UK that want to deliver and offer a buildingSMART professional certification. So a lot of work there to get that needs to be done, but it is in hand, and I'll talk about this module 6 in a bit more detail in a couple of slides. So let me just talk a little bit about certification. Let me just step back for a second around certification just to provide some clarity around that. So from where we sit at the moment, there are 3 types of certification. First one on the left is a certification that a company has the required processes to deliver the digital built environment. So that really is a process of accrediting a company, much like you do with ISO 9001, and you get accredited to say, yes, you are using the appropriate workflows and processes within your organization to the object of conformity. And the object of conformity in this case is ISO 19650-2, and that is something that essentially UCAS are getting behind. So that's been part of our discussion, and we're kind of leaving that to UCAS to try and drive that certification so that it's very robust. And they are working on launching that pilot program again around the autumn time. So there'll be a proper UCAS underpinned certification or accreditation at a company level. I think the other types of certification are really talking about individuals. And again, there are, from where we sit, based on that Bloom's taxonomy that I've already mentioned, there are essentially practitioner knowledge and foundation knowledge. So what we are focusing on right now in buildingSMART and the UK BIM Alliance is the middle one. So that's providing foundation knowledge and understanding. So essentially giving people the knowledge and understanding. So that's the lower 2 layers of that taxonomy. You know, we might do some stuff around the practitioner side in due course, but right now we just want to get that base knowledge and understanding improved across the UK. So that's what we're focusing on. You've all seen that diagram before. It just really is a precursor to the next slide, because this talks about the UK BIM framework and its context in terms of lifecycle management and organizational and asset management processes. So you have other ISO standards out there like 9001 I've already mentioned, and 55000, for example. And I guess the point I'm trying to make here is if we start to think about this professional certification, at a top level, we have this UK BIM framework learning outcomes document that will be launched in the next 2 to 4 weeks. If we add to that the learning outcomes that are already out there from buildingSMART, of which there are these 5 modules, essentially that is what the professional certification foundation basic program is all about, and that really is what we are focused on. And just to reiterate the point, the body of knowledge is already being developed and launched. It's just been published. It's just been, what's the word I'm looking for? It's been smartened up by a marketing agency, so it's a nice looking document, but the content has been around for some time. Has already been launched by a number of chapters. The UK&I chapter will follow, as I say, in the autumn time. But in order to do that, we need to develop this body of knowledge for our own module 6. Some of you are actually part of the content working group or have put your hands up to be involved in that. I can see a couple of names at least on the attendee list. The only reason I haven't sent that to you yet, because that was left with me to send to you at some point, is we've been waiting on the publication of the UK BIM framework learning outcomes. So now we know what's in that. We've actually already done the mapping. So if you are in that content working group, then you'll be hearing from me very shortly, because the hard work starts in terms of developing that module 6. Oh, and by the way, while I've got everybody, if anybody wants to volunteer to be involved in one of these content working groups, either this one or the one I'm about to mention in a second, I'd be delighted to have the help. So if anybody wants to get involved in that, then please let me know. So let's just summarize what I've said. So at the top level here, I've talked about accreditation, and the whole point about accreditation is it should be robust, it should be consistent, whichever certification assessment body you go to, and therefore, from where I sit, it needs to be underpinned by UCAS, and that is the program that they are launching. They've already had some of their schemes presented to them by some certification assessment bodies. There's now a process that they will go through backwards and forwards to get it launched, as I say, around about the autumn timeframe. So that's currently being worked on. The 55,000, 9001 ones, in terms of what I've previously said, I mean, they've been out for ages, so it's a well understood process, and it needs to be done by a third party, and it needs to be impartial from any other commercial interests that those organisations might have. So let's get on to the foundation knowledge piece then. So I've already mentioned that we will be seeing this document called the UK BIM Framework. To repeat, it's free content. It will be available to anybody that wants to use it. So if a university lecturer wants to use it to develop the course curriculum, and I understand we're trying to work to a time frame to get that out, as I say, in the next 2 to 4 weeks, so it can actually be used to educate those students through the next curriculum. And you know, as I say, that's coming out very shortly. How does that link into the professional certification if you want to get a professional certification? I'm just going to use the word badge at the end. It's very simple. We have the body of knowledge I've already mentioned. That's already done. And what we need to do is develop that body of knowledge module 6, and all it will do is pull out anything in the UK BIM framework learning outcomes document that gets published that isn't covered in the standard international professional certification content. It will get covered in our own body of knowledge, so that when we launch it in the UK&I, you can be assured that those two things are entirely aligned. And that's basically an exam portal. So a student can take some training, potentially not take some training even, and then they can go and do the buildingSMART exam. So there's an exam portal all set up for that. And that's part of the hard work we need to do on module 6, is we have to not only develop the body of knowledge, we also have to develop the question database that goes behind that as part of the exam portal. So hopefully that describes what's going on and where we're at. I will also mention that there are many other certifications that buildingSMART International are launching, including the COBE one, which is at the moment based very much on the US standard, but there is a certification for that that is being developed and also partially launched. I won't go into the detail of that, because the bit we are focusing on right now in the UK is this bit on the left in the red box. The other thing I will mention is that we, as part of that role that I mentioned as the lead, or not the lead, I'm working with Andy, who's on the call from Care Construction, Andy Bootle. He's leading, I'm supporting him. We are going to be producing some learning outcomes around this concept of UK data interoperability that was the subject of that report that Casey mentioned earlier. So that will be very much along the same lines as the UK BIM framework learning outcomes. So it's very consistent in terms of its development. And that probably, I'm just conscious of the time. How am I doing? Not too bad, actually. Very quickly, what is the buildingSMART professional certification, in case you don't know what it is? Essentially, the concept is very much around Bloom's taxonomy as well, hence the alignment. It basically talks about these 3 levels of learning, the foundation knowledge, the practitioner knowledge, and the expert knowledge. We are focusing, as I've already said, around the foundation knowledge and around this basic module. So these are the other curriculums, sorry, that are being developed. Kobe I've already mentioned, but there are other curriculums that will be coming out from Building Smart International in due course. But right now, we just want to get this basic one to fulfill our mandate, which is to try and upskill the UK workforce around the digitization of the built environment, if you want to use those words. So we are very much focused on that right now, and that will be our first launch. What are the time frame? I said 2 to 4 weeks, 3 to 5 weeks to be perhaps more conservative. That's the UK BIM Framework Learning Outcomes document, so they'll be coming out in due course. In terms of the whole thing together and the building or bSUKI launching their program, again, I'm just going to say autumn winter 2020, which basically means this year is the plan, and that's what I'm working to try and get done. This is the mapping that's already been done. I'm not going to leave that up there for long because A, you can't read it, and B, it'd take too long for us to go through that. But just to let you know, it's being done. There's lots of work being done behind the scenes to make sure these things are aligned and that the message and the guidance is similar. In terms of what does it mean, what was the process? Well, essentially, this is the way it will work, and this is the last slide, you'll be pleased to hear. So this is essentially the way it will work. You basically have 4 important groups here. You've got Building Smart International, you've got the UK&I chapter, sorry, that should say UK&I chapter, not just UK. You've got the training provider, and you've got students. So essentially what will happen once we launch this professional certification program is a training provider will apply to the UK&I chapter to be an approved training provider. That will all get agreed with Building Smart, obviously international, obviously, but actually the responsibility is ours as a chapter to make sure that that's done in an appropriate way. They will get appointed as an approved training provider, and then each student, should they want to take the training, will obviously go to an approved training provider to go on an approved training course. They will be issued exam codes, and you will then go onto the exam portal to take the exam, the UK&I exam, which will cover both modules 1 to 5 and module 6. So essentially, that is the current state of the upskilling program and where we're at. So I think we have a bit of time for questions. If I can find out. Okay, we've got quite a few questions. Let me see. Actually, most of the questions are yours, actually. Yeah. Actually, there aren't any other questions. I can't see any questions, Pam. Are there any other questions?
Phil, there are quite a few questions.
Okay.
I have assigned them to you, so you can't see them. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying I can't see them.
Okay, do you want me to ask you the question?
Why don't you ask me the questions? Yes, go on.
So can an organisation or company develop their own training program, or does it have to be offered by an external company, or have I completely misunderstood?
Can a training provider, so I guess there's 2 answers to that question. One, if you want to take the UK BIM Framework Learning Outcomes document, which recommends the things that you should include in your curriculum for your training course, then it's free content. So anyone can take that and develop their own training course. Entirely up to you, and that is entirely down to a client to decide if that's what they want. If you want to get a professional certification of your staff, then you will need to go to a company that's offering some kind of professional certification. And we don't want to disenfranchise anybody. So any company that is doing that and adopting the content or developing their content around that learning outcomes document, the UK BIM Framework one, as far as we're concerned, we fully support that. And as part of that, we are clearly going to be supporting the Building Smart program that gets launched by bSUKI in the autumn, because it's a very well thought out program and it has this professional certification at the end. But there are other companies out there that I'm sure will be offering their own certification, the other BSI, RICS, BRE, blah, blah, blah. You know these organizations, I'm sure. So yeah, we're not excluding anybody from offering a certification, but if you want to follow the recommendations here around the Building Smart one, then that's a way to go. But what we want to encourage actually is as many training providers, including my own company, to provide a professional certification as long as it follows a well thought out learning outcome framework, which is essentially what we're doing by aligning ourselves to the Building Smart one.
Okay, thanks, Phil.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, if I can, before you go to the next question, Pam. It's in a kind of hybrid blend to that answer, so that probably also answers Sean's question. Companies like Royal Haskoning that I work with are also looking at developing their own training content and becoming a training provider. So as an internal part of the organisation, working with Building Smart International to become an approved training centre and offer the training individually to our own staff, but then also potentially offering that to our clients as well. So there is a kind of hybrid answer, but I'd fully agree with Phil. Royal Haskoning, DHV are working through that process, working with Building Smart International to develop and become an approved training centre or provider.
Yeah, because I guess they're wanting to do it. I guess they're wanting to do it at an international level. So yes, makes perfect sense. And if I look at what's going on with other chapters, if I look at the training providers, for example, that have been approved in Germany, there is a whole mix of, corporate companies that are big enough to run their own training programs. There's education establishments that actually want to offer the Building Smart professional certification. And there are what you might call the traditional training providers, like my own company. So there's various mixes, and we want to encourage everybody to raise the competence of their staff. So whichever route you choose, we just want to make sure that we're providing some content guidelines that fully embraces Open BIM and the UK BIM framework.
Thanks, Phil. Just to reiterate or clarify, UCAS is an accreditor and accredits certification bodies such as BSI, BRE, etc., who do certification. Yeah, that is correct. Okay, thank you.
That is correct. So in every country you have an accreditation service. The UK one is obviously called the UCAS one. I don't know what the Japanese one is called, but maybe it's called JAS. So maybe the Japanese accreditation service. But they are all part of the, I think it's called the Accreditation Forum, which is I guess think about it as an international body, a bit like Building Smart International, with all these kind of local chapters called assessment services. And all the assessments that are done and certifications in the UK around things like 9001 are actually underpinned by UCAS. And to me, that's really important, because if it's underpinned by UCAS, you can be or have some confidence that the scheme used by a certification assessment body like BSI or BRE or Ocean or Lloyd's Register, whichever one it is, if they are on the programme and it's underpinned by UCAS, you can be assured that the way that they are approaching it is very similar and very consistent. If it's not underpinned, then they're doing what they feel is the right thing to do. And I'm not belittling that at all. I mean, it might be very credible, but I think if it's underpinned by UCAS, like the 9001, then we all know that what we're getting is consistent across those organisations.
Okay. Duncan asks, is the UK BIM Framework Learning Outcomes the successor of the BIM Academic Forum Learning Outcomes Framework?
I'm not sure I can answer that, but what I do know is it was the source before we started to redevelop that was the UK BIM Task Group's Learning Outcome Framework that was published back in 2011 or 2012, I can't quite remember. So that's where it started, and it's really an update to that. So as you can imagine, it fully embraces the new ISO standards pretty much. That's very much at the core of it, but that's essentially what it's a republication of. I don't know if that is the same as the education one you just mentioned, but I assume it probably is, or at least that was the underlying source content for that education learning outcome framework that you just mentioned. But I'm not qualified to answer that.
Okay, thank you. Both Sean Farrell and Nicoletta have volunteered to get involved in the process, so we'll take that offline.
Excellent. I will say thank you very much for that.
I'm not sure on timings. Tell me if we need to start. But what is the process for a university to become a training provider?
Well, a university can take the UK BEM framework learning outcomes document that gets published in the next few weeks, and they can just go and develop a training course, their curriculum. There's nothing stopping them doing that. If they want to become part of the bSUKI world, then and offer the professional certification at the end, then they will have to do exactly what any other training provider needs to do, which is when we are ready. When I say we, I'm talking about the SUKI. When we are ready to, we've got to develop this content, we've got to develop a question database behind it, and then we will start looking at applicants for companies or universities or anybody that wants to become a training provider, and we will go through that process. And we need to decide how we do that, how many we can do. But as you know, I guess the intent is to have as many people offering credible training courses as is possible. But there'll be a process that we will need to go through to just kind of decide, which training providers can sign up, how quickly, and what the process is. So that's probably something we need to work on over the next 6 weeks while we're working on the content. Is how are we gonna take applications from training providers, and how are we going to get them up, ready, and launched. So there's some work to do there yet, but it's open to everybody as far as I'm concerned.
Brilliant, thanks, Phil. That's all the questions.
Okay.
Now.
Good. In which case, I am going to be handing on to Tim Davis from Bylaw, who is going to be talking about IFC in real life. So, Tim, over to you.
Hi, thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about IFC in real life. My name's Tim Davis. I work for the Bylaw joint venture, who are constructing the civil engineering works on Hinkley Point C. I'm going to give an introduction to the project, to Bylaw, a bit more about myself as well, and how using IFC on this project has given us flexibility, agility, and stability. So the purpose of this presentation is to show you that the IFC really works. It's not just something in practice. It's not just something that a bunch of bearded men in a room talk about and say digital transformation and open BIM is fantastic. It does actually work in reality. So what do I mean by works? Well, as someone that works for a contractor, one of my biggest priorities is to improve construction productivity. Now, as important as they are, I'm not going to talk about the super high level concepts of digital transformation or collaborative working or fluffy blue sky concepts like that. So I work for a contractor. My aim is to get us to build more safely, to build a better product, to build it faster and with less waste to drive costs down. And IFC really helps us with that. So I'm going to start off with a little introduction. So this actually rather unassuming image will be the finished power station that we're building. We're building 2 reactors. Unit 1 is on the left and Unit 2 is on the right. Those identical looking buildings with a control center in the middle. At a total project value to the client of just over £20 billion, it will be one of the most expensive civil buildings in the world. Just some facts about the power station. So each reactor building generates 1.6 gigawatts of electricity, a total of 3.2 gigawatts, which is equivalent to about 7% of the UK's electricity. It's enough to power over 5 million homes for up to and possibly over the next 40 years. It will be a very significant part of the UK's infrastructure for many generations. So by law are delivering the largest single civil engineering contract in Europe. Over £2 billion worth of works. We'll be pouring 1.3 million metre cube of concrete. Over 200,000 tons of rebar is going in this. A huge deployment of tower cranes, and some of the structures are absolutely unbelievable. 3 metre thick solid foundations, massively thick walls, huge structures. In terms of scale and complexity, there isn't much that can compare to this. The project won the buildingSMART International Large Construction Project award. This was in conjunction with ICOS Group and Advanced Group, who are some of the responsible designers on this project. Find me. I'm a digital engineer working for the ByLaw Central Digital Engineering team, developing tools and processes to exploit the data that we have in IFC files in order to improve the construction productivity. This photo is me last year after the completion of the UK's largest ever continuous concrete pour. A rather staggering 9,000 metre cube concrete was poured over about 3 days to complete the foundations for the first reactor building. A feat that we just repeated a few weeks ago, actually, for the second reactor, except we did it even faster. Now, all concrete and rebar for these enormous pours have been modelled in 3D and subsequently quantified, ordered, forecast and planned in 4D using IFC models. As Casey mentioned, I'm also on the buildingSMART UK and Ireland committee. Just a quick bit of background. The client is Nuclear New Build, which is made up of EDF and China General Nuclear. ByLaw JV is one of many tier 1 contractors working on this project. We're delivering the civil engineering works, which is mainly the structures. The client's designers produce 3D IFC models. They work very closely with ourselves to make sure that what we're building is, well, first of all, that we design in 3D, that is clash-free, and that is buildable. It's very big. It's a very big site. Really big. Covers over a square kilometre of just pure construction work. And we have a lot of cranes, a lot of plants. Obviously, with the lockdown and COVID-19, the amount of people on site has dipped, but it's at about 1,000 people at the moment, I believe. But we're going up to about 4,000 or 5,000 people on site at once, plus thousands of other people employed around the world doing modelling and engineering. Our sort of centerpiece at the moment is probably the biggest land-based crane in the world, the SGC 250. Seen here placing the steel inner liner containment for the nuclear reactor. Has a lifting capacity of about 1,500 tons at 100 meters from the center. It really is a beast. And This is some of the construction, some of the buildings going up. It's quite a recent photo of this. Again, all that rebar that you can see in that photo, all that concrete, including almost all the tower cranes, that's all modelled in IFC. All those hundreds of thousands of pieces of rebar that you can see around there, again, these all come from IFC models. So if you have a look at what these IFC models look like, here's a zoom in of just some rebar with some couplers stuck on the end. It's quite a congested area. If we zoom out, we can see that, oh, actually that's quite a small part of the total rebar around here. If we continue zooming out, might give you a bit of sense of scale of just how much we're building. And this is made up of many small models, but this is pretty much one level of 8 levels of one building of 3 of one unit. So you're looking at only a few % of the total project, and it's a vast model. Again, showing some of the complexity. If we zoom in on this little area here, so it's quite a big model, but we zoom in here, you can see the level of detail, the amount of rebar plates that would be embedded in the concrete. We're looking at very, very significant complexity. And that's that small area. So how on earth do we manage this complexity and scale and build to such a the highest quality that a nuclear power station requires? Really, IFC really helps us with this. It allows us to be flexible in terms of we have many different tools that we can choose from. It allows us to be agile. Our technology changes so fast, and this is such a long-running project that we need to be able to change and adapt as the project is progressing. And it needs to be stable as well. We can't be changing directions, changing whole systems constantly. That would just not be a way that you can practically manage a large project. Now, I'm not going to talk about too many specifics. I'm not going to tell you the exact tools that we use. One of the reasons is because we use pretty much all of them. And also because we don't have time. And IFC is not about tools or specific implementations. If you focus on the implementations too much, people get lost in the small details of like the export isn't perfect, round tripping doesn't work. When what's important is the big picture of what IFC and the open BIM technologies allows. So I'm going to focus first on flexibility. So traditional projects would mainly revolve around a single platform. Projects may be Autodesk-based or Trimble or Bentley-based projects. Getting data between them is very hard. Generally, you are stuck in quite a small bubble of tools that you can practically use. This is endlessly frustrating when you may be mainly using vendor A's tools. They may have a 4D simulation tool, but you see vendor C has a better one. So what IFC allows us to do is to really blur the lines around these vendor bubbles and to always use the best tools for the job. I usually demonstrate this in person by holding my hands close together and saying that this is the amount of options you have by sticking to a particular vendor or particular platform. And then I hold my hands far apart and say, this is how many options you get when you use IFC and other open BIM technologies. Unfortunately, in a webinar, I can't quite do that. So instead, I have my beautiful assistant, Bob. So on the left, he's demonstrating if you stick to a particular vendor or just a few tools, you don't have many options. But if you go for IFC, which is endlessly compatible, you have so many more options to choose from. So in slightly more practically, what this has meant for us is we have a huge plethora of tools from many vendors. Teams within bylaw can use the best tools for the job. As I've said, I'm not telling you what software you're using because we pretty much use all of them for what they're good at. So Revit, Trimble, Bentley tools, all in use. We got many small specialist vendors tool, and we're even looking outside of traditional construction tools. Next is agile, being able to change. So the word lockdown has entered the vocabulary of the general populace, and really social lockdowns are a great way of getting rid of viruses. However, their software lockdowns are not good. Once you decide to use a single company's platform or tool or proprietary system, you're effectively locked in, and you can do all the due diligence in the world and be 100% certain that you have the best tool for the job. But what happens if in 12 months' time things aren't as they first appeared and competitors with better solutions start to enter the market? So even though you've been flexible, you made a decision, you still need to be able to change. It's often a very high cost change. And one of my favourite stories to demonstrate this is the new cutting edge HMS Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier, many years in the making, which during a press tour, it was noticed some of the computers were running Windows XP. The project clearly made a decision early on and had no ability, no agility to be able to change as new developments occurred. What IFC has given us is it's massively compatible. It's decreased the cost of change for us, and it's given a lot of power to us, because as much as we want to work with software developers, we must remember that we are their customers, and being based around IFC models gives us huge power to confidently say that if we don't get the support or development we want, then we will stop giving them money. We will go to another vendor, and nothing makes them do stuff for you than the prospect of losing of not getting our money anymore. So how has it helped us? It's helped us because we have a very modular system between the teams. They're connected but not dependent, because we use IFC as the standard exchange format. It means each team can upgrade when they want. There's no big, massive upgrades. Each team upgrades when they want to and how they want to, without impacting other teams. 4 years in, we are still continuously upgrading our tools. Because we're not based around a proprietary format, we can upgrade when we want and how we want. I'd say that we're probably using more up-to-date and new tools than probably a lot of projects that started just 6 months ago, because of this ability to continuously change and upgrade and try new tools. There's almost nothing out there on the market that we haven't looked at. But with all this change and all these options, where's the stability in that? Oh, it's great for us technical geeks, but it doesn't seem to be that good for the poor business leaders. Almost, if we've given them almost too many choices, we've told them that we're going to be changing too much. So how having so many tools can seem like it makes management and investment and decision making more difficult. However, this hasn't been the case for us. As we take the principle that tools should change. We want tools to improve continuously, but the underlying data and information, we want that to remain as stable as possible. And that's what the IFC format and Open BIM technologies has given us. It's a very stable format. It's ISO standardized. It's not controlled by any single vendor. There's going to be no big changes that are going to make us that are going to suddenly make us panic about anything. It gives us the foundation to make long-term decisions. So where have we been making our long-term investments? Well, not at the tool level. As I said, tools change and improve over time. Platforms, again, even platforms change a lot over time. You don't want to get stuck on a particular platform. Vendors, if you pour your investment into vendors, you may well lock yourself in, as described before. The best place is with the data structures. That's why we've invested in IFC. It's because that gives us the long-term stability that we need to have confidence for that the business leaders can have confidence in. So sorry, quickly go back to this one. So I'm not saying don't invest in tools, platforms, or vendors, or that we don't. We do, but always be aware of if that's a short-term or medium-term investment. Now, our more long-term strategy is we invest in data warehouse. We have huge data integration from many models, from many different tools. We can bring them together. We can connect them to other data, all enabled because IFC is an open standard format that we can access easily. It gives us insights, coordinate between different models. We can even do automation to really unleash whole new workflows. We have a lot of bespoke development aimed at IFC, which we can do that because it's a stable platform. We reuse models across similar buildings. We can even reuse models, something we're looking at the moment, onto other projects in the future because we know that IFC is a stable format. And it gives us the confidence for these long-term decisions. So to summarize, using IFC in real life has given us flexibility to be able to choose from many options and always choose the best tool for the job at the time. It's given us the agility that even though this is a long-running project, that we are able to keep up to date with all new developments and change when necessary without very high costs, but to have an underlying stable data structures that allow us to make these long-term decisions. So this is what we're doing on Hinkley Point C. There are future nuclear power plants in this country, big one being Sizewell, which will almost certainly be following the same data structure and data strategy as this. So that's me done waffling on. I'm going to see if I can see any questions. I can see one's popped up from Gareth, who's asking, what is the development requirements for the end client, i.e. IFC, Revit, or DWG? It's a little tricky because they're nuclear quality requirements. So the vast majority isn't so much models, especially for the stuff that we're doing, because we're just doing concrete and rebar, which, according to Kobe, are non-maintainable assets. So it's much more paperwork and quality requirements that the end client is interested in. though we are developing as built models as well, of course, which will be IFC. There's another question here, which is, how do you deal with variations, and how is change management process implemented in IFC? How does it decrease cost of change? What is the quantification process? Okay, so we're developing quite a lot of some of the bespoke development is on managing change. Anyone that's ever worked on a real construction project knows that change is horrible. It's killer. It's emotionally soul destroying. So we've invested a lot in that, sort of inspired. We're trying to go for a slightly automated approach when it comes to change, in that we only model change, we only model delta change. So we'll have a big model, and if we need to say add a few bits of rebar to it, we'll model just those few bits of rebar, and we have automated processes which then merge that change delta model into the original model, and we can do the inverse as well. We can extract the bars we want to remove relatively automatically as well. We have a supercomputer that we're implementing that does that. It decreases the cost of change for us because it allows us to use legacy models and legacy tools. So there's no big legacy data that we have to deal with. A question from Graham. You talked a lot about the benefits of IFC. What about the practical use? Almost how much development did you have to do to get compliant IFC out? In terms of the practical usage, just I'll just do a quite short list. Obviously, we do coordination, we do automated extraction into data warehouse, we do automated 4D by linking models to programs. I want to say automated. This isn't mapping. This is literally SQL mapping. We produce method statements, animated method statements, quality records produced from models. Honestly, great big long list. Probably don't have time to tell you all about, sadly. So how much development did you have to do to get compliant IFC out? Now, we took a slightly different approach here, in that it was obvious very early on we weren't always going to get IFC models that were 100% compliant, and we realized that if we didn't have compliant models, then that would stop loads of downstream processes. So many of our digital processes are driven by the IFC model. If the IFC model wasn't right, it just destroyed the whole thing. So one approach is to continuously hammer designers. That doesn't always work. That can be very slow. So we've developed a sort of cleaning and enrichment process where we get IFC models from multiple designers, and we feed them through what we call our bylaw digital machine, which does lots of automated checks, make sure things are in the right coordinates. If they're not, quarantines them somewhere else. Sometimes we can do manual fixes. It checks to see if data isn't in the right format. So that's how we get our compliant IFCs. If we get bad ones, then we fix them ourselves as much as possible, and that works in most cases. How are you checking? So another question from Graham. How are you checking all these IFC files? What sort of issues are you having? Have you developed any best practice you are willing to share? We're checking relatively automatically. As I said, we have models in the as soon as a model appears in the CDE, we have tools that download them from the CDE, run loads of tests and checks on them, and produces reports, and reports on change as well. Which IFC do we use? IFC 2x3 because at the time that the project was starting, about 3 or 4 years ago now, compatibility for IFC 4 just wasn't there. Are you required to coordinate builders' work, hulls, etc.? Yes, that's slightly more up to the designer, but we, as a contractor, we do an awful lot of checking ourselves. We do a lot of clash detections. We do that a lot. And we've got, what does compliant model mean? Are you referring to the coordination model view or other MVDs? Now, one thing that we don't actually use MVDs, unfortunately. Really would like to, and it's absolutely something that we're looking into. But at the time of project kickoff, again, it's about 3 or 4 years ago, there wasn't quite the knowledge within the business at the time, so we just wrote a sort of paper document specification of what things should have and what properties different objects should have. Relatively basic, but it did do the job. So are you using, another question here from Sean, are you using ISO schematron for IFC MVD checking / verification? No, is the simple answer to that. Okay, I think I've hopefully answered everyone's questions there. I'll leave a few more seconds if anybody else wants to ask anything. Okay. I think that's me done now. So I'll pass over to Emma now.
Hi Tim, thanks. That was really good, really interesting. Could have listened to those questions all day. I feel like my part now is going to be an anticlimax to those really good presentations. So we'll see how this goes. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Right, let's see if this works. So I put together a quiz which is based on IFC. This is only meant to be a bit of fun, so don't get too competitive. Yeah, it's just a light-hearted quiz because we're kind of really used to those at the moment with lockdown, and it's just to help provide maybe a little bit of guidance and education as well. So if you would like to participate in the quiz, if you go to slido.com and join us with the hashtag bSUKI-02. You can see there's a few people who have logged in. I'll just wait a few more moments for everyone. Don't be shy. Any more people? Okay, right, let's start then. So first question, what does IFC stand for? Is it Industry Foundation Classification, Information Foundation Classes, Industry Foundation Classes, or Information Focused Classification? A few more seconds. Okay. So most people were right on that one. It's Industry Foundation Classes. So second question, what standard does IFC 2x3 TC1 relate to? So is it ISO 16739 2005, ISO 16739 2013, or ISO 16739 Part 1 2018? Couple more seconds. I should have done like the countdown sort of sound. Okay. Ooh, controversial. It's actually 2005 IFC 2X3 has been around for. So next question. IFC versions now use a numbering system. So which version number is IFC 2X3 TC1? Is it 2.3.00? Is it 2.301, 2.310, or 2.311? And the answer is well, neck and neck on that one, but half people got it right. So IFC 4, what year was it published? Well done, everyone. Majority got that one right. It has actually been around since 2013, which might surprise some people, and we still haven't fully implemented it at the moment. Do you have to pay to access the IFC schema? Well done, everyone. Great. So the next one. Who manages the development of IFC? Is it ISO, BSI, SEN, or buildingSMART International? I really hope everyone gets this one right. Okay, and the answer is, oh, not everyone. It is actually buildingSMART International. They actually do manage and develop the standard, and then it does go to ISO to then become an official international standard. Next question. What is the most widely used file format of IFC? So is it JSON? Is it RDF? Is it SPF? Or is it XML? So this is the format that most we tend to think of as IFC files. These are all IFC file formats, by the way, but we just want the most widely used one. Yeah, it's STEP. It's been around for quite a while. And the great thing about STEP is you can open it up in a text editor and it is actually readable by humans. So what standard covers STEP physical file format? Is it 10.303.11, 10.303.21, 10.303.28, or 10.303.31? Well done. I'm surprised most people got that one right. I always remember that one as 21 steps. So what is the main format that the IFC schema documentation is built off? Is it HTML? Is it PDF? Or is it SPF? These questions do get progressively more technical as we go through. Yep, it's HTML. Next question. Which data modeling language has been traditionally used for IFC? Is it information engineering notation, Express, object role modeling, or unified modeling language? This is the traditionally used modeling language. Well done, most people got that one right. So according to BuildingSMART International, IFC is a standardized digital description of the built environment, a file format for the AEC industry, or a geometrical 3D model for software, so it doesn't support more mainstream file formats. Apologies for the spelling. Yep, that's right. So MVD, what does it stand for? We do talk about this quite a bit. So is it model view definition? Is it model virtual design? Is it model variable data? Or is it mass virtual data? Yep, it's model view definition. So what is an MVD? Is it a view from modeling software? Is it a subset of the IFC schema for a specific use? Or is it just a dump of unspecified data? Yep, it's a subset of the schema. So it's a bit like if IFC was a one big pie, then it would be a slice of the pie for one particular use. So question number 14. Which of these is not an MVD which has been or is being developed in accordance with BuildingSMART? So we've got quantity takeoff view, coordination view, construction operations building information exchange, better known as COBE, or site programming and logistics. Yes, so 4D type of information isn't a MVD at the moment. Right, now delving down into the schema a little bit. So which of these is not an IFC attribute? So is it name, global ID, description, or fire rating? Well done. Yes, it's fire rating. Fire rating is a property, not an attribute. Which of the following is not an IFC entity? So we've got IFC ceiling, IFC covering, IFC slab, or IFC sanitary terminal. Oh, the answer is actually IFC ceiling. So IFC, well, ceiling is actually a predefined type of IFC covering, so it's actually covered in that. IFC sanitary terminal is sanitary ware. True or false, IFC 4.3 contains infrastructure entities. Yeah, that's right. That's true. So we now actually have infrastructure entities in IFC 4.3. So they're all there, ready to go. Not defined is a predefined type which features in every predefined type list. But what is the other one that features in every one? Is it custom defined, generic, bespoke defined, or user defined? Wow, you know your predefined types? Yes, it's user defined. User defined is used for scenarios where there isn't a suitable predefined type which is listed. So you use user defined. What is a collection of properties called? Is it a property set, a property group, property class, or property category? Yeah, it's a property set. So you have a property set, which is a collection of properties, and then that property set is then related to an entity via a relationship. We're talking of relationships. Which attribute relationship links an entity to a property set in IFC 2x3? So is it linked property set? Is it property set names? Is it has property set? Or is it property set link? The answer is has property set. And last question. So which IFC entity creates the relationship between an object and an external classification system? So this is where you would use something like Uniclass 2015. So is it IFC rel classification? Is it IFC rel decomposes? Is it IFC rel connect ports? Or is it IFC rel associates? I thought I'd end on a really tricky one. Okay, great. And the answer is IFC rel associates. So, no surprising there is the winner. Well done, Mr. Nesbitt. Yeah. And then well done, Andy, and then well done, Dan. So there's our top 5. Unfortunately, I've got no prizes. You'll just have to wallow in the thought of being smug for a bit. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. It was just a bit of fun to kind of, you know, break up presentations and get a bit more interaction. Yeah, so I wanted to end with just talking about the buildingSMART International website a little bit, and I know Casey touched on it in the presentation to start with, but I get asked a lot of questions about, you know, IFC and various bits and bobs, and really good resource is this website. Now, previously, about a year, 18 months ago, the old website was very difficult to navigate and was a huge barrier in itself, really, to adoption of these standards. But this new website is so much better, much more easy to navigate, and it is packed with information, you know, from basic information about who buildingSMART are. We've got the technical roadmap there, which Casey talked about earlier, which I would ask everybody to look at because it's really interesting. Then on the standard side, we've got the this is basic information about each of the standards from buildingSMART, and then we've actually got information about each of the rooms as well. So that's where you can find that information. The technical site will take you to another website, and this is real sort of detailed, sort of really techie information about the standards, including obviously IFC, BCF, and there'll be downloads there as well, open source information, also links to GitHub. As well, we've also got information about certification, which Phil was talking about earlier, and then various bits and bobs, information about the awards, and I also want to point you to the events calendar. So this has listed in it all the different types of events which buildingSMART are hosting. Some are available for anyone to join, some you have to be invited to. So I would just ask anyone to keep an eye on this if they really want to get involved with you know, certain areas. Keep an eye out to see if there's any workshops which you can attend. There's a common data environment one which takes place every 2 weeks, and I believe that is open to everyone because there's a Zoom link on there. So if you're interested in that, participate there. And then also the awards, which Casey talked about earlier. The deadlines to enter, and wants help from Nick or Tim, please let us know. We really want to get some more UK entries in there this year, and that'd be really great to see. So that's kind of me wrapping up. The next buildingSMART bSUKI Assemble event will be September the 30th. So I hope you can make that, and we will see you then. I'll just double check to see if I've got any questions. Is there any questions, Pam, to answer before we go?
No questions as such. There's a couple of comments if you want to look at those, or I can let me just, sorry Emma, I didn't assign them to you. So there's a question around IFC 2x3 TC1,
Yeah.
released on July 10th, 2007. The quiz mentioned 2005.
I've just took the information from the buildingSMART website.
Okay.
My decision is final.
Exactly.
Let's not go into this.
But other than that, there's a couple of comments on saying it was really good. It was a good quiz. But yeah, that's it.
Right. Okay then. So if nobody's got anything else to say, we will finish 7 minutes early. So thank you, everybody.
Sorry, Emma.
Okay.
Sorry, Emma. I think Nick has something he wants to say. I don't know, if Nick, if you're still there.
Yeah. There was a call earlier to get involved, and I think the main opportunity for getting involved is to think about which rooms you're involved with in your life and join in with those. There's a particular call that we're putting out, which is a project which some of you may have heard about before, called Infra, which is a combination of infra and asset information requirements. And we would like to get people involved to come up with common best practice in the UK for infrastructure projects. So essentially to reduce the burden on individual projects to specify everything, if we can have some common standards. And we're putting together a team to look and collate best practice in the UK, and also relate it to the new infrastructure facilities that are now in IFC 4X3 that you ought to mention. So if there's anyone on the call who thinks that would make my job easier, please do get in touch in all the usual channels, because I think now is the time to make sure that the UK best practice is captured, so as to encourage the infrastructure sector to catch up with the building sector in this field. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Anybody got anything else to add before we go? No. Okay then, thanks everyone for joining, and we will see you in September.